history's most consequential shipwrecks lie scattered across the ocean floor. Monuments to human error, wartime tragedy, and nature's indifference. These vessels, once masterpieces of engineering, carrying thousands to their destinations, now rest in darkness, transformed into underwater memorials and artificial reefs. What draws us to these maritime disasters isn't merely their dramatic endings, but the contrast between their lives above water and their afterlives below. In this video, we'll explore 5 shipwrecks, examining both their active service and where they rest today. From passenger ferries claimed by navigation errors, to wartime vessels sunk by mines and torpedoes, these disasters show how quickly routine voyages can become maritime catastrophes, often at a devastating human cost. Welcome to Shipwreck History. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and help us get to 10,000 subscribers. Built in France in 1964, the Salem Express served as a roll-on roll-off passenger ferry in the Red Sea region, operating during the early 1990s. At 115 meters long, the vessel traveled primarily between ports in Saudi Arabia and Egypt. On December 11, 1991, the Salem Express departed Jeddah, carrying hundreds of Egyptians returning from Mecca. Captain Morrow, who had commanded the ship since 1988, was familiar with the route, but faced deteriorating weather conditions as the vessel approached the Egyptian coast. Amid high winds and waves, Captain Morrow made a critical navigation error. Rather than following the standard route along the outer reefs, he attempted a shortcut closer to shore to reduce travel time. At approximately 11:13 p.m., on December 14th, sailing in darkness and heavy seas, the ship struck Hinman Reef at considerable speed. The collision breached the hull and crucially damaged the bow door mechanism. This design vulnerability allowed water to flood the car deck rapidly. The vessel destabilized within minutes, giving passengers little time to evacuate. Most were asleep in their cabins when the ship began listing heavily to starboard. It took less than 20 minutes after impact for the ship to go down. The Salem Express capsized and sank just hours before it would have reached its destination. Of approximately 650 people on board, only about 180 survived, though the exact passenger count and death toll remain disputed. Egyptian authorities reported 470 passengers lost, while other sources suggest it was over 800. Today, the Salem Express rests on its starboard side at a depth of about 30 meters. The wreck remains well preserved, with the bow door still open, visible evidence of its fatal flooding sequence. The vessel's accessibility makes it a frequent dive site, though its status as a mass grave creates ethical concerns. Marine growth now covers much of the exterior, with coral formations developing on the hull and superstructure. The wreck's interior is a somber time capsule. Personal belongings, suitcases, clothing, and everyday items remain scattered throughout passenger spaces, tangible reminders of the lives abruptly ended. Divers are restricted from entering passenger cabins, respecting the hundreds who were lost inside. The sudden sinking of the Salem Express left families with little warning or explanation. Many learn of the disaster through news reports rather than official channels. What was meant to be a joyful homecoming instead became one of Egypt's most devastating maritime tragedies. Few other wrecks in the Red Sea combine such well-preserved structural elements with such a clear and documented story of human error and its consequences. The SS Baron Gouch represented the golden age of Austro-Hungarian maritime power. Constructed at Scotland's Gourlay Brothers shipyard and launched in 1908, this elegant 85-meter passenger steamer primarily served the Dalmatian Express line, connecting Trieste with coastal destinations along the Adriatic. When World War I erupted in July 1914, the Austro-Hungarian Navy requisitioned the Baron Gouch for military transport duties. After completing several missions carrying troops to Kotor, the vessel returned to civilian service on August 11, 1914, a transition that would prove tragically brief. 2 days later, on August 13, the ship departed Kotor with approximately 300 passengers and crew. Prior to sailing, naval authorities briefed the ship's officers about defensive minefields, located in the northern Adriatic, to protect the naval base at Pula. Captains received explicit instructions to maintain specific routes to avoid these hazards. Around 3 p.m., as the Baron Gouch approached the Istrian Peninsula, the ship's first officer altered course. Despite warnings from a crewman who spotted mine-laying vessels in the distance, the ship proceeded directly into a freshly laid minefield. The misjudgment proved catastrophic. A tremendous explosion tore through the port side of the ship, followed shortly by a secondary blast when the boilers ruptured. The ship listed heavily to port and began sinking rapidly. Passengers rushed to the deck, but the vessel's increasing tilt made launching lifeboats nearly impossible. Just 7 minutes after the initial explosion, the Baron Gouch slipped beneath the Adriatic. The disaster claimed 127 lives, including numerous women and children. Rescue efforts by nearby vessels saved many survivors, though the exact fatality count remains disputed in historical records. For over 40 years, the wreck lay undisturbed and largely forgotten until its discovery in 1958 by a Slovenian diver. Today, the Baron Gouch rests upright at a depth of 40 meters off the Croatian coast. Unlike many World War I-era wrecks, the vessel remains remarkably intact. Its hull, boilers, and superstructure are clearly discernible, though some damage from Yugoslav Navy target practice in the 1920s is evident. The wreck has transformed into a thriving artificial reef, with marine organisms colonizing its metal surfaces. Sponges, corals, and algae create a colorful veneer over the once elegant passenger ship. The site has become a premier technical diving destination, offering a well-preserved example of early 20th century naval architecture and a poignant memorial to one of the first civilian maritime tragedies of the Great War. The SS Aurea began its life as an unremarkable Norwegian cargo steamer, built in Sunderland, England in 1920. At 2,127 tons and approximately 100 meters long, nothing in its early commercial service suggested its eventual role in one of history's deadliest maritime disasters. The vessel's fate changed dramatically during World War II. After Norway's occupation in 1940, the Aurea was interned in Casablanca that June. 1 year later, the ship was requisitioned by French authorities and renamed Saint Julien. By November 1942, it was formally returned to its Norwegian owner and renamed Aurea, but was soon after assigned to a German shipping company for Mediterranean operations. By early 1944, Italy's surrender had created a dilemma for German occupation forces in the Dodecanese Islands. Thousands of Italian soldiers, formerly allies, were now considered prisoners of war. On February 11th, German authorities directed approximately 4,000 Italian POWs from Rhodes onto the Aurea, a vessel with normal capacity for perhaps a few hundred passengers. Reports indicate the prisoners were confined below decks in cargo holds, packed so densely that movement was impossible. The ship departed under a Norwegian captain, with a final destination of prisoner camps in Germany, stopping first in Greece. On February 12th, the severely overloaded vessel encountered strong winds and heavy seas near Cape Saunion, just 25 miles from Praia. Captain Rasmussen lost control in the storm, and the Aurea struck rocks near a small island. The impact breached the hull, causing progressive flooding. What followed constitutes one of the war's greatest humanitarian tragedies. With hatches secured from outside, prisoners in the lower holds had no escape route. As the ship broke apart, over the next 36 hours, those trapped inside either drowned or died from exposure in frigid waters. German authorities mounted minimal rescue efforts, delayed by the storm conditions. Of approximately 4,000 people aboard, only 28 survived, 21 Italian prisoners, 6 German guards, and 1 Greek crewman. German censorship ensured the disaster remained unreported, and many Italian families received only vague notifications that their loved ones were missing. The Aurea's wreck remained officially undocumented until 1999, when a Greek diver located it after interviewing local fishermen, who had recovered artifacts in their nets. The vessel lies at depths between 28 and 42 meters, broken into multiple sections, but with significant portions of the hull still recognizable. Unlike many historic wrecks, the Aurea has received minimal official protection or memorial recognition. Divers report encountering personal artifacts, mess tins, boots, and other belongings, still scattered across the seabed. With an estimated 4,095 fatalities, the Aurea disaster surpasses the Titanic's toll nearly threefold, yet remains mostly absent from popular maritime history, a forgotten catastrophe from the Mediterranean theater of World War II. Launched in 1923 as the Munich, the ship that would later become the General Von Stuben initially served as a prestigious passenger liner for a major German shipping line. At 168 meters long and over 17,000 tons, it was the first German transatlantic vessel to enter New York Harbor after World War I. In 1930, the ship was renamed after Friedrich Wilhelm von Stuben, the Prussian officer who aided American forces during their revolution. The outbreak of World War II fundamentally altered the vessel's purpose. By 1939, the German Kriegsmarine commissioned it as an accommodation ship, later converting it to an armed transport. In early 1945, as Soviet forces advanced into eastern Prussia, the ship joined Operation Hannibal, the massive evacuation of German military personnel and civilians from the eastern Baltic. On February 9, 1945, the General Von Stuben departed Pillau, severely overcrowded. Military records indicate the ship carried wounded German soldiers, refugees, returning military personnel, medical staff and crew members, an estimated 5,200 people in total. Just after midnight, on February 10, Soviet submarine S-13, commanded by Captain Alexander Marinesko, detected the dimly lit ship. This was the same submarine that had sunk the Wilhelm Gustloff 9 days earlier, with the loss of over 9,000 lives. At 12:55 a.m., Marinesko fired 2 torpedoes at the General Von Stuben, from a range of approximately 1 kilometer. Both torpedoes struck the ship, one near the bow, another near the engine room. The impacts caused catastrophic flooding and immediate power failure. In darkness and freezing temperatures, the ship listed severely to starboard. Few lifeboats could be deployed in the chaos, and the wounded soldiers in lower decks had virtually no chance of escape. Within 20 minutes, the General Von Stuben disappeared beneath the Baltic Sea. The German torpedo boat T-196 managed to rescue approximately 300 survivors. The remaining 3,900 passengers and crew were lost, making it one of the deadliest maritime disasters of World War II. The wreck's location remained unknown until May 2004, when a Polish vessel discovered it approximately 30 kilometers off the coast of Poland. Lying on its port side, at a depth of 70 meters, the wreck is well preserved in the cold, low-salinity Baltic environment. Marine growth is minimal compared to wrecks in warmer waters, leaving much of the original structure intact. The hull reaches up to 50 meters from the seabed, with torpedo damage visible on the port side. Technical divers occasionally visit the site, though the depth, temperature, and poor visibility make it challenging. As a war grave containing thousands of casualties, the wreck is protected under international law, emphasizing observation rather than artifact recovery. The FW Abrams exemplified the hard-working tankers that fueled America's growing industrial economy. Built in 1920 and measuring 140 meters in length, this standard oil vessel spent decades transporting petroleum products along well-established shipping lanes without incident. The attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 thrust the FW Abrams into a dramatically altered operational environment. By early 1942, Germany had initiated Operation Drumbeat, bringing submarine warfare directly to American coastal waters. The region off North Carolina became particularly dangerous, with dozens of merchant vessels torpedoed within sight of shore. To counter this threat, the U.S. Navy established defensive minefields near key ports and shipping channels. These underwater barriers were designed to provide safe transit zones for vessels and to deter enemy encounters. It was precisely this protective measure that would claim the FW Abrams. On June 2, 1942, the tanker departed Aruba, carrying 90,000 barrels of crude oil, bound for New York. After an uneventful voyage north, it approached the Outer Banks on June 10. Following standard wartime procedure, the vessel anchored overnight near Ocracoke, awaiting daylight escort through the hazardous waters around Diamond Shoals. In the early morning hours of June 11th, a Coast Guard patrol craft arrived to guide the tanker safely through the defensive minefield. As dawn broke, heavy rain severely limited visibility. The FW Abrams lost visual contact with its escort, and in the confusion, the captain altered course, inadvertently steering directly into the minefield. At 6:40 a.m., an explosion tore through the starboard bow as the ship triggered a mine. 30 minutes later, a second detonation occurred near the midship pump room. The crew, believing they were under attack, prepared to abandon ship. A third explosion at 7:40 a.m. sealed the tanker's fate, and the captain ordered evacuation. All 36 crew members reached shore safely at Ocracoke Naval Station by 12:40 p.m. The abandoned FW Abrams drifted northward, gradually settling on its bow. Naval officers who inspected the vessel on June 14 found it completely submerged and unsalvageable. The wreck's exposed mast created a navigation hazard, occasionally misidentified as submarine periscopes. Navy salvage operations later depth-charged and wire-dragged the wreck to flatten it below a safe clearance depth. Today, the FW Abrams rests in approximately 80 feet of water, 10 miles south of Hatteras Inlet. The wreck is broken into 3 main sections, with the stern section remaining most intact. The bow section, while recognizable, shows significant damage from post-war demolition efforts. Marine life has transformed this accidental casualty into a thriving ecosystem. Divers regularly encounter rays, grouper, octopus, and occasionally dolphins around the wreck. The FW Abrams is a reminder of the complex dangers merchant mariners face during wartime, where friendly measures designed for protection could themselves become deadly hazards. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and let us know in the comments what shipwrecks you want us to cover next. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And until next time, keep exploring.